A few weeks ago, I released a video sharing my opinion on EXU Calamity after watching the final episode, but it was really nothing more than a first reaction. Now, however, I had the time to fully integrate what worked so well about that show and to translate it into actual advice for all the DMs out there. So, welcome to Arcadia, this is the DM's Den, and today's DM advice, straight out of EXU Calamity, is about how to railroad your campaign without railroading it. Definitions first. Railroading. What is railroading? I absolutely need to make a video dedicated exclusively to that. Look for it in the eye up there in case you're from the future and that video is already out. But just so you understand right now what I mean when I say that Brennan did and didn't railroad his players at the same time, here's my definition of the term. Railroading doesn't happen when you have a plot for your campaign or a main trail you want your players to follow. Railroading happens when the players try to leave that trail and the DM negates their choices and forces them back onto the rails against their will. In my opinion, this is the #1 sin for DMs, and in a way, that's what Brennan Lee Mulligan did in Calamity. He even admitted openly in the campaign wrap-up that he had several contingency plans to force the apocalypse even if the players didn't do any of the things that ended up triggering it. That is what a railroading DM would do. However, we must be aware that Calamity, being an actual play D&D show, and such a short one at that, doesn't follow the same rules as a normal D&D game you would play with your friends at home, for example. It needs to be entertaining, and it needs to be a story, with a beginning, a middle, and an end. There was also player consent. Everyone at the table knew that was a story about the apocalypse, where the goal was not to prevent it, since it was going to happen anyway, but to explore it. All things considered, no one can blame Brennan for railroading that bit. It was the whole point of the show, and what we got as a result was this amazing, dramatic, and incredibly cinematic story. Every single player choice contributed to enhance the story and flowed so well that it almost looked like a scripted movie. How did Brennan pull that off? He says he railroaded. He says he inquired each player quite intensively about their characters and what would they like their story to be about. The result, as he puts it, was that the players offered him their own railroads. You have got to admire Brennan's genius. This is a guy that has been doing D&D miniseries for ages now and is the master of ensuring the plot unfolds and the players bite his hooks despite the short number of sessions. If you watch Dimension 20, you know that everything in his games seems connected, and he always has the perfect answer for every player choice. Obviously, this is exponentiated by his incredible improv skills, but with this, he also shared with us a little bit of his technique to tackle player buy-in and always have the most dramatic consequences to their choices at hand. He makes the players provide him their own plot hooks. He basically figures out what the characters care so much about that they won't resist exploring if they come across it. And then he puts that in front of the characters. That way, not only the players get a huge kick out of the game since they are playing exactly what they wanted to play through, but Brennan can also relax in his game prep because he can be almost sure that the players will always bite those hooks. And to me, this is not railroading, even though it seems like Brennan disagrees. Sure, he does have a main path he hopes that players will follow, but unlike my definition for railroading, he does not negate player choice, nor forces them back onto the rails if they walk away from it. Furthermore, even the rails are provided by the players, perhaps even unknowingly. If the players are laying their own rails, is that truly a railroad? Or is it just player choice? I think it's closer to player choice. In essence, it really is no different from laying down plot hooks that relate closely to the players' backstories, which you're sure they're going to bite, or from playing a campaign module that everyone agreed to play. I mean, if your players ask you to run Rise of Tiamat, are you railroading if you follow the book and have them fight Tiamat at the end? No, of course not. It only becomes a railroad if one of your players, or all of them, decide not to fight her, perhaps even join her, and yet you force them to, because that's what the book says. What Brennan does, though, is playing the probability game. Instead of laying down plot hooks he thinks the players are going to bite, he actively engages with them, either directly by asking them without reservations or indirectly by reading their backstories carefully. He then pinpoints what are the hooks that those characters, but also those players, are always going to bite, and he builds his main narrative around that. Obviously, this is still D&D, and the DM never knows when, not if, the players are going to do something unexpected and diverge from the path they thought they would follow. This is not an absolute cure for being blindsided by the players. However, he knows that there is a higher probability that they will bite that hook rather than any other. So, what's the lesson to learn here? Actually, it boils down to campaign prep. One of the things that makes railroading so appealing is the fear that if you allow your players free choice, you will never be able to deal with their unpredictable actions, and you won't be able to improvise on the fly. And experienced DMs often think that to deal with this, they need to prepare for every single choice their players might take. And that's a lot of work. Wouldn't it be much easier to prepare just one path and force the players to follow that one? And that's the problem. For many DMs, railroading equals easy fun times, and free choice equals a bunch of work. In other words, they are enticed by railroads because they promise a lot less work to prep. But that's not necessarily true, as Brennan Lee Mulligan teaches us. If you study your characters and your players, you will find which things matter the most for them. Weave your narrative around those. Playing the probability game, you can be 70 or 80 or 90% sure that they are going to bite those story beats more than any of the other ones. And if you're more confident they will explore those beats, you can spend more time on them, fleshing them out, making them more interesting, and save even more time on all the other ones that you would have to prepare without being sure your players would bite, but now you don't. Is this railroading? No, not unless you deny your players the agency to steer away from that main path you prepared. And be aware that they will still do that. In those moments, you will have to rely on your improv skills, but that's not a problem exclusive to Brennan's method. It could happen to any kind of content you prepare, and more likely to. But if you draw inspiration from your characters to build the situations they're going to face, you will find that they are much more likely to engage with them, which will free you prep time to improve other parts of the game. You'll also feel much more comfortable allowing your players more freedom, knowing that they are much more likely to coalesce back around the content that you did prepare. I will also throw in here an extra advice of my own that ties with Brennan's philosophy really well. Don't prepare solutions. Prepare problems and let the players have fun. Your problems are puzzles for your players to solve, not you. When Brennan had Asmodeus engage with Xerxes, I'm sure he had no idea what he would do. And when Larian had the opportunity to cast Blythe, there is no way he could be sure if she'd do it or not. He was sitting back and enjoying the ride, which makes the game much more fun for a DM. Resist the temptation to predict the way your players will solve the situations you put them into, even the ones inspired by their backstories. That will only cost you extra prep time that you don't really need to spend, and if you plant the clues for your next encounter within that solution you thought of, you risk that your players will never find them if they devise a completely different solution of their own. Simply give them reasons to engage with the problem, which is what we've discussed so far, and then have the clues for the next problem, for the next encounter, or for the next story beat associated with the problem itself, rather than a result of one particular solution. That way, you will not be burdened with all the extra stress of redirecting your players to a railroad. They will feel like they truly own the game, and everyone will extract a greater enjoyment from the game, guaranteed. As a final note, remember that Calamity was an actual play show, and not all that happens on those can be used as advice for your home games. Those are shows made to entertain an audience, not a game with 100% focus on the fun of the players, which is what your home game should be. That will also be a future video, look for it in the eye up there. Brennan Lee Mulligan was actually the first DM I ever saw to recognize this on camera, saying that the way he prepared Calamity and Dimension 20 is completely different from the way he preps games for his friends, which is something that made me respect him even more. There is much more that we can learn from Calamity, but I will save that for future videos. If you haven't watched my opinion on Calamity yet, you can do it right here. And if you'd like to support this channel, there's nothing better you could do than keep watching these videos. There's a whole playlist on DM advice showing up on my left as we speak. If you like them, consider subscribing. Follow me on social media too for fantasy art and all the geekiness. Thank you for watching. I'm the first Arcadian. Say hi, intrepid heroes.